My dear Albert, said he, let me introduce you to Monsieur Maximilian Morrel, Captain Espahis, my friend. And what is more, however the man speaks for himself, my preserver, salute my hero, Viscount. And he stepped on one side to give place to a young man of refined and dignified bearing, with large and open brow, piercing eyes, and black mustache, whom our readers have already seen at Marseilles, under circumstances sufficiently dramatic not to be forgotten. A rich uniform, half French, half Oriental, set off his graceful and stalwart figure, and his broad chest was decorated with the Order of the Legion of Honor. The young officer bowed with easy and elegant politeness. Monsieur, said Albert with affectionate courtesy, the Count of Château-Renaud knew how much pleasure this introduction would give me. You are his friend, be ours also. Well said, interrupted Château-Renaud, and pray that, if you should ever be in a similar predicament, he may do as much for you as he did for me. What has he done? Asked Albert. Oh, nothing worth speaking of, said Morrel. Monsieur de Château-Renaud exaggerates. Not worth speaking of, cried Château-Renaud. Life is not worth speaking of? That is rather too philosophical on my word, Morrel. It is very well for you, who risk your life every day, but for me, who only did so once. We gather from all this, Baron, that Captain Morrel saved your life. Exactly so. On what occasion? Asked Beauchamp. Beauchamp, my good fellow, you know I am starving, said Debray. Do not set him off on some long story. Well, I do not prevent you sitting down to table, replied Beauchamp. Château-Renaud can tell us while we eat our breakfast. Gentlemen, said Morcerf, it is only 10:15, and I expect someone else. Ah, a true diplomatist, observed Debray. I said it yesterday. I'm going to re-emphasize it today. Keeping all these voices and men separate and organized is going to be a task. I hope you have a little bit of patience for me as I try to work my way through it. But what do we have to learn today? Maximilian Morrel, the one and only, saved the life of our Château-Renaud, another count in this story. Dumas patting himself on the back a little bit here when he talks about Maximilian after a brief physical description, saying, whom our readers have already seen at Marseilles under circumstances sufficiently dramatic not to be forgotten. Well, Dumas, you certainly have a high opinion of your own dramatic flair. Yeah. This chapter, I feel like, is going to be an interesting one for me in my commentary, or at least part of it, however long this conversation is going to last, because I feel like we're going to fluctuate between passages like today, where not much has happened, not much to comment on, because I don't know who Château-Renaud is, and why it's important that Maximilian saved him. How does that affect Albert? I don't know how any of this connects yet. So not a lot of bombshell information. But I would imagine, too, the more we layer these characters into it, like when Dante, if he arrives, that is going to change things. So I bet I'll have a lot to comment on there. So I think it's probably a good time to continue through our biography of Dumas. Okay, so the next passage I have here has to do about Dumas' relationship with Maquet, Auguste Maquet. Maquet had written this historical novel, and I hope I'm going to pronounce this right, Le Chevalier d'Armental. I'm probably putting the emphasis in the wrong place there. Forgive me. This is a book that Maquet had written mostly by himself, and Dumas kind of edited and put some of his flair on, and then published it under his own name. but it originated with Maquette. So, did I say Maquette? I meant McKay. Is it McKay or Maquette? Let me just get that answer for you all. McKay. Yeah, okay. So I've generally been saying it right. Just this episode, I've been saying it wrong. So, Auguste McKay had written this book, and Dumas edited and put his name on it. But that wasn't like a bit of stealing because it started their collaboration. This note here talks about how that kind of got off the ground, that it wasn't always McKay who got the ball rolling, particularly when it comes to the Three Musketeers, because the story goes that Dumas had found these memoirs of a man called D'Artagnan, and he took that idea to McKay in order to develop it further, and then obviously they collaborated between the historical research and structure and plotting, as well as the dramatic flair, dialogue, characters that come from Dumas. It also says here, though, that there's possible evidence that Dumas had progressed a good way through the Count of Monte Cristo before inviting McKay to collaborate on it. I'm not going to go through this list of names here, but the book goes on to say that this collaboration method wasn't uncommon of the time. Goes on to list a number of partnerships that formed around this time in French literature. And it outlines a little bit of what the nature of the relationship is, in reference to all those other authors, saying that the composition was a legitimate collaboration between the two or more of those authors, but between McKay and Dumas, that this was not how they worked. What he outlines is essentially that Dumas and whoever his collaborator was, but particularly McKay here, would first talk over the plot before it was written, and then Dumas' collaborator, again, often McKay, would prepare like a preliminary draft of a particular chapter or section of the book, and then Dumas would then review the draft, edit it, and basically rewrite the entire thing without departing from the initial structure that was agreed upon and generated by his collaborator. And this is the line here that I had bookmarked this section for, because I found it kind of fascinating. And I'm just going to read it verbatim because it's one sentence. Quote, "It was improvisation on a theme already roughly worked out, so that he was spared the labor of invention to a large extent, and could, at the same time, justly claim that the finished product was his own, every page bearing the stamp of his inimitable style, his verve, wit, and dynamic narrative thrust." That's a spicy meatball. If you are a collaborator, as McKay was, who would eventually get up in arms and sue Dumas for co-authorship. And honestly, I feel like it's what a lot of people are using AI for now. I have an idea, I plop it into AI, it gives me a general structure that I can add some thoughts to, and then, you know, heaven forbid you're so lazy that you throw it back into AI and have it write the dang thing. But I was just talking to someone about this, and I find it kind of interesting, if you allow me to make a little bit of a longer episode, because they've been short lately. The idea about creating. And what Dumas seems to be doing is work. He's working. He's not writing. He's doing the work of writing. He's not doing the creation of writing. When we talk about most authors, a lot of it has to deal with an authorial voice, which comes from not just like the name on the manuscript, but like, this is my work that explores a theme and through these themes come to some larger truth about the world, etc., etc. The act of invention is where an authorial voice usually, not always, comes from. So it's fascinating to see that Dumas was more interested and could be more regimented with the task-based elements of writing. Last chapter, when we talked a little bit about his schedule, his routine for writing, it makes more sense. And at the time, I had said I had like a good 2 or 3 hours in me a day. And part of that is because it taxes my brain to sit there with a 1,000-yard stare and work out what is it that I want to say with this, and then jot down an idea and free associate and see how it grows in ways I didn't expect and how that then changes things. Like, that is the exhausting part. If it was just sitting down to edit a story all day, like, yeah, I'm not discrediting the work that goes into that, but it's a different requirement of your brain. Editorial mode versus creation mode are very different things. And it does sound like Dumas is definitely contributing creative flourishes to all of his works, but it's that invention period where the truly unexpected stuff comes out. You can surprise yourself as a writer, and I find that those are the types of stories that translate to audiences as well. If you can surprise yourself, you're more than likely going to surprise your readers. I had a little time off from work and gave myself a goal to write a short story while I was off. And all I had was one sentence in my note app. And the idea was, a simple premise. It felt very much like a parody of something. I hadn't written comedy in a while, and I thought, oh, you know what? Let me give this a crack. And I just took the one sentence as the first day that I sat down with it. And as soon as I open it up and go, okay, well, who are the characters? What is the scene? What is the setting that can support this premise? Suddenly, characters leapt off the page, and those characters and the situation that they were in told me a completely different story than the parody that I had written down in my notes app. And it turned much more into like a John Cheever sort of short story, exploring the idea of the world passing you by as you age and move out of relevance to, the culture as a whole. Now, listen, I'm not comparing myself to John Cheever. I'm certainly not comparing myself to Alexandre Dumas. But that was a lot of work for me, at least. But that was what was rewarding to me. If I was just given a outline or, a preliminary draft of the story and was asked to sit down and just edit it, yeah, I could add some, dialogue that's witty. I could, maybe deepen a character or two. But that little growth that came from the sentence into the first comprehensive outline I wrote was what made it so special to me. Again, I'm not saying it's a special story. But that's why I love writing and why I can't do it all day long. I can put in, a limited amount of time. Anyway, does that change how we see Dumas? I don't know. It does a little bit for me. I can still look at the story as the story and not pick it apart. But when I stop and look at what is Dumas actually doing with this, suddenly it's through a different lens. And I think an important one, as my personal goal in life is to start to break away from the idea of the auteur theory, because so many people and things go into any work of art. Wow. Okay. Thank you for indulging me in that. Let us continue tomorrow with a little bit more of chapter 40. Until then, Okay, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.